So first thing is first, I want to go ahead and place the image files for each of these people. And it's going to be the same kind of thing. Let's get out of the who we are and let's return to our team from earlier. And if we go into the members, all right, what we need to do is we're going to need to drop those files on top of each person's vector layer. So do a file place linked. And instead of this being high-res images, now I'm going to go into the team members, and Auto is the first person, okay? And I can open it up in the camera raw, and I can adjust so that he ends up looking not so darkened in the face. So this is how I ended up adjusting. If you want to take a look at that, say okay. And now I get to place him, and he's going to snap right up here in the corner. Actually, he's not going to snap in the corner because I don't have the grid turned on. Anyway, I'm going to use Auto's picture, and then I can come down here and do my option set. And so what you're going to do is the exact same thing I just did, but for all of these. So I'm going to do that so you don't have to watch me. Okay, so now that's done. And what I want to do now is, well, first of all, I should mention that I think on Michael's picture, and I think that was the only other one, perhaps. I also felt like I needed to do a camera raw adjustment, like I did on Autos, because the picture I thought wasn't really as good as it could be, you know, sitting next to all these other ones. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to collapse the members group, and I'm going to select the BGR team layer, the background layer for this, and then I'm going to go ahead and place my image. So if I go to place linked, I'm no longer in team members. I'm going to look in the high res images, and I'm going to choose workspace because I think that that one's going to look pretty nice back there in the background. And I think I want to sort of put it somewhere in this vicinity, and I'll go ahead and just hit enter. And it's kind of hard to see, you know, when it's this big until we can clip it, and then we can adjust it. And also I'm going to go ahead and stop looking at my grid. I had shown my grid because, or my guides, excuse me, because it was so much easier to just snap all of these into their corners. Now that I have this over here for the workspace, I'm going to do my option constraint to that clipping vector, and I think I'm actually pretty happy with the scale and the placement of that picture, but it's so busy because the image in the background has just as much dominance as these images in the foreground, you know, because of color and you know, different line qualities and things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a vector shape on top of this one. Actually, for this, I'm going to turn my grid back on, or not my grid, I keep saying that, I mean guides, because my guides are set exactly where I want. I don't want them randomly snapping to some strange place in the grid. And I'm going to create a new vector. And I've already got the foreground color that I want picked. It's sort of this, I don't know, sort of mud color. This is actually kind of the color I think that this image is going to need, because it has so many oranges and browns that I think it's going to need something to really mask back the saturation and so forth. And I'm going to put a solid fill on here, and let's go ahead and draw the vector now. And it's going to go right on top of workspace. Okay, so there's a solid fill now. And one of the things that I can do is go and play with the different filter modes. Not all of them are going to have effects that you want, but okay, so here's what this one looks like, and I think actually multiply is kind of nice. It really screens it back, not just with black, but with color that is already sort of in that range. And by the way, one of the ways that I picked that color, and I didn't show you this, but I probably should go back and give you an idea, is if I turn off this rectangle that I added, one of the things that you can do is use your eyedropper tool and go and sample different colors from the actual image, and that's how I got this, and I picked it up from one of the wood grain areas. And I think that that ends up being nice because it's sort of neutral, it's not full of color, and I think that that's what this needs. It needs to be knocked back a little bit. Something else that you can do if you still feel, here, let's get rid of the guides, it's under show. If you still feel like this is a little bit too much for the busyness, what you could also do is come down to workspace, all right, which is, the picture, and you can adjust the actual opacity on it a little bit. And remember, there's that layer down here, that sort of gray BGR team that we had put. So as you lower the opacity, what's going to happen is it's going to sort of show that gray through, and it's blending with the brown. So that's kind of like a nice balance if you want to knock that back even more. That's really up to you. And I think that maybe somewhere in here might be kind of nice. But if you like it sort of as the full opacity, that's fine too. But after looking at it, I think maybe somewhere in the 80% range, opacity on the actual image itself is kind of a nice compromise. Now, I still feel like these images are a bit, I don't know, they're not quite there. Like, they're still receding too much in the background. So I think one of the things that would benefit us is to put a stroke around them, and maybe even a drop shadow. But let's start with the stroke. And I guess we can start first. I'm not going to start with Otto. I'm going to start with Elsa, only because she has like a darker background. So let's go down and find Elsa. And there we go. I'm going to put it on the vector layer, okay? And so we're going to do a stroke here, and we'll see how it looks as white instead of black. So it could either be white, or it could be, like some gray color if you wanted to. And then we need to play with, where it is, whether it's on the outside or the inside, or the center might work. And then we can also look at it as a 2-pixel, okay, and that might work out. And then I think maybe we need to knock the color down a little bit. It's pretty bright, I think. So maybe somewhere in this range. And if you wanted, you could even go into that kind of that brown color, and you could pull in like a little bit of the actual orange as well, sort of this neutral color, so it's not bright white or just plain gray. So you could try something like that. And then it would also be nice, I think, if, let's go back into the effects, if we also add a little bit of a drop shadow. And I'm going to keep, and you have to actually select drop shadow, I'm going to keep the 90%, and I'm actually on this one going to change the opacity so that it's maybe somewhere around 40%. I might change the distance a little bit. I might increase the spread and the size. And I think that that might be kind of a nice compromise right there. And I think that that's a pretty good set of effects. Now, what I can do, instead of having to paste this on each and every single one, I'm going to go ahead, right-click the effect, and I'm going to say copy layer style. And what I can do is go up to where it says members, and I could paste it, but before I do that, I'm going to give you a heads up on something. Two things are going to happen. If I paste it on the entire group layer folder of members, it's going to do two things. It's going to compound the existing style that's already on Elsa. So I would need to actually remove the style from Elsa, after I've copied it so that it's in my clipboard. But the other thing that it would do is it would also apply that stroke and that drop shadow to the text. I don't think that that's what I want to happen. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to first take out the actual type, and I'm going to group that and move it. Let me show you. I'm going to drag this layer panel out so that it's bigger and easier to see. And we'll make this a little taller. And scroll up. So now we've got members. Now we've got all these type layers with their names. So what I'll do here is I'm going to hold down, on Windows it would be Control, on Mac it's the Command key, so that I can manually identify and select the typography layers that are in here. So let me go down, let me collapse her, and I'm going to get all the way down to Auto. And then while these are selected, I can hit my folder for creating a group, and I'm going to call this member names. All right, and I'm going to take that out of the members folder and put it up inside of our team. And instead of this being just members, I'm going to call this member photos. Okay, so now we have two different folders inside of our team. We have the member photos and we have the member names. So now what I can do is I can just make sure that this is still in my clipboard. I'm going to copy that layer style, but I'm also going to take it now and I'm going to throw that layer style in the trash because I don't want to duplicate it and compound that style on Elsa's image. So now what I can do is I can collapse member photos just to make this cleaner. I can right click member photos and I can paste that layer style, and you see that it's so much more efficient to do it that way. It just pasted that layer style onto everybody who was in that group. That's wonderful. Okay, so now we're basically, I think, finished with dealing with the Our Team section. If you really wanted, you could put drop shadows behind the names, but I wouldn't really recommend that because it might actually not look very good on a web page. I think that this looks, for me, it's fine. Now, we need to go to Contact Us, and one of the things that we had before is, if you go in here, we had this BG contact and it's orange, and it's, especially with this being orange now, that's just too much. What I'd like to do is I'd like to put a background of something in there, like I have a picture of a typewriter, which I think is kind of cool because, you know, it's like Contact Us, it's typing and whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and find that image. We'll go to File, and then I'm going to place the linked file, and it's my typewriter picture here. And it's a fairly large image, and I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and redock my layers panel. So it's redocked and out of my way. And I think what I should do probably is decrease my screen size a little bit so that I can adequately see kind of what's happening. And I might like something like that. You know, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that that might look nice with the typewriter placed in that position. Now what I want to do is option constrain it to this ultimately becomes a clipping vector, clipping path. You can do command and then semicolon to show your guides. And so what I'll do here is blow this up a little bit, and on top of typewriter I'm going to draw a new vector shape. Let's see about maybe lowering the opacity to maybe 70%. Now we just need to put our Google Map smart object in here. So let's go ahead and select Google Map, and then we're going to go to place linked again. It's not in high res images, it's a screenshot called Google Map Screenshot. This time it's one of those things where it is going to lose a little bit of quality, but it is what it is, so it's really just a placeholder pretty much. And we could scoot that over. Do our option click, and we probably need to put a stroke around that as well. And for that I'm going to be consistent, and I'm going to copy a layer style. It's going to be from Who We Are. If you remember, we had this layer style here. I'm going to copy that. Copy the layer style, and then I'm going to move back up here and I'm going to put it on the Google Map layer, and we're going to paste that layer style, and so now it'll match the other one. And in fact I'm going to do it also for all of the items right here in the form fields, and I just did it so you don't have to watch me, and I actually had to do it individually because otherwise it would have put strokes around the text as well. And the send button needs to match this one, so let's fix that one so that now you see I put a white border around it and it matches this button down here in the user interface. And the last thing that we need to do that we discussed is we need to put the titles over these two images. So real quickly I'm going to get us back to the right spot. So we're in Who We Are. We're going to scroll down and we're going to find where the commercial gallery is, and on top of that actually is where we need to create the band. So I'm going to quickly draw these vectors. Okay, I'm going to toggle my guides on, and then now that they're on I can draw something so that it'll just snap, and let's try doing something like in that range. And if I want to just double check, I can make sure, okay, well let's do 50 pixels and not 51 for one thing. And the other thing that I can do is blow this up and make sure it did in fact snap, and that looks good. And so what I need to do now is I want to check and make sure that that looks pretty centered on that plus symbol. And so now if I zoom out, what I'd need to do is I just need to rename this and then duplicate it, copy it over, put the type on it, and you're basically good to go, and you're pretty much done. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to export images out of this for the web and generate image assets, but this mockup is done.